Hello, everyone. So we had a debate last night in Las Vegas ahead of the Nevada caucus. This was the first time that Bloomberg was on stage. Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York, and he was attacked by everyone on stage basically, except for Mayor Pete. Pretty notably. I mean, he was collecting those billionaire donations. Obviously, he's not going to get money from Bloomberg, but I suppose he doesn't want any blind spots in his arguments, as it were. But Bloomberg was just you couldn't say he had a good night for sure because he was just being attacked relentlessly by even the centrist type people like Joe Biden and I think Amy Klobuchar too was going in there too. And I mean Warren laid down probably the most effective attack on him. There were probably a few, but yeah, she overall had a good night. I would say at the debate, she could see a little bit of a surge, and I don't know if yeah, it's like it could mean that she's going to outperform her numbers, but I still obviously want to see Bernie win, and Bernie is still kind of by and large ahead by like 19 points on average. Or actually, I think that was the newest poll, and then the average is probably around 16 points ahead, something like that. Um, but yeah, so they brought up the issue with the culinary union. Uh, so what had happened was like the culinary union leaders were basically going against Medicare for all and saying that Bernie's going to take away your health insurance, but when you actually look into it, the people within the union itself, like they're supportive of Bernie and Medicare for all. So it's like the leaders are going against their workers. And then like Elizabeth Warren tweeted, it's like, oh, we shouldn't go after unions or something. It's like I and this isn't even, I don't even think this was directed at Bernie himself. It was like his supporters because this whole narrative that was like talked about a lot in this debate was the Bernie bro thing, and so he has to address that again. And he condemns hatred on online. Like you have to be civil, I guess, is what he's trying to say. Because like I mean, but he can't control every joke, every little thing that gets posted, and he at least stood his ground by saying like like his campaign is not the only one that is like vitriolic and like acts this way online. I mean, there's people of all different political persuasions that go after people. Um, so like there's plenty of like centrist people on Twitter I've seen who are just like completely ridiculous and will say all kinds of things about Bernie supporters. It's like, oh, like you don't actually care about anything. Like you don't care about uh, like people of color or something. It's like there's all kinds of accusations being thrown around on the internet, and we know that this is what the internet is like. So no one is complaining about this except for these centrist hack candidates. Honestly, um, and I mean Warren is doing it too, but she is opportunistic. So it's like even though she had a great like good performance. Excuse me, with the debate, like it could be a little too late. I think for her, it's like I don't know if she can pull out a good win in Nevada. Like the best she can hope for is second place. Really, I feel like so. You know, there she's just it's too little too late like I'm saying. So there's people on MSNBC, even Joanne Reed, made plenty of comments like generalizing about Bernie bros, saying they're like I don't know, like like white like young guys who just like don't care about like anything, like they're like pontificating about like policy and shit. But it's like, yeah, like we care about policy or whatever. It's like you can look back at that like tweet storm that she put out. That was probably back in like 2016. There's all kinds of things like AOC. She was just on The View recently, and Whoopi Goldberg went after her for being like you're standing on my shoulders, you know, like people that are progressive like you are standing on my shoulders and Nancy Pelosi's shoulders, and like you're shitting all over us. I mean, she's definitely said things to that effect. I'm barely even paraphrasing Whoopi Goldberg. Like she's went after Justice Democrats before in general, and she's like, oh, she goes after Bernie for being an independent. He's not a real Democrat. Um, like this is just such mindless um, commentary, and frankly, there was a lot of this talk at the debate. There was just a lot of this kind of pointless topics of discussion being thrown around. It was a very fiery debate, and people were sniping at each other like crazy, but there wasn't a ton of policy. Like there was healthcare was one thing, and then like trade was mentioned briefly for a little bit, but climate change they talked about, but there was just like all these really kind of side issue things that I feel like got in the way, and this is the media at its finest. I mean, like they make it just like a reality TV show. It's what I've been saying. Like they don't have to. They should keep it policy oriented. They should 100% strive for efficiency. Like why are we wasting time on pointless nonsense? Fucking, excuse me. Amy Klobuchar not remembering the president's name, and I agree. Like she should know the president of Mexico. She should know his name. I agree with that, but I think the problem is that like you ask a question like that, and then out of nowhere, Warren like starts defending Klobuchar. Is like, oh well, I slipped up too. I've forgotten a name. Like, I understand, but like, why are we spending so much time on this nonsense? So this has been a problem, overall. But I mean, like, it still was kind of the most fiery debate so far, I would say. But okay, back to the Bernie bro thing. Just because Bernie even brought up that like talked to Nina Turner or Brianna Joy Gray, who's like the campaign. I'm not sure what she does in the Bernie campaign, but she's pretty high up there. They've been harassed online too, and they get death threats. AOC, Ilhan Omar get death threats. But like I'm saying, like no one actually complains about this nonsense except for like the centrist hacks. Bloomberg made an ad of just memes of Bernie supporters. Like I don't know, like it's just me. It was just memes and jokes, and he's acting like this was some form of oppression, and so Bloomberg is not the only one. He's just like kind of notorious for being really, I mean, ridiculous. I mean, Bloomberg should have had no place being there in the first place. He bought his way on stage. He's an oligarch. Um, just absolutely the worst possible choice to go up against Donald Trump, and it's quite funny to me because I've heard people that I know personally who consider themselves straight line Democrat, and this was months before, but like they said with a straight face, like yeah, we should go for Bloomberg. We need some people really think you need a businessman type person to go up against Trump, and even back then, like I didn't realize how wrong this was. Like Bloomberg is is in many respects it's going in further direction of Trump. It's what it really is. I mean, he's just an oligarch through and through. He's more competent than Trump, so he would be a more effective neoliberal. He would, have so much bipartisanship, and he would be able to talk around his, racist policies. He would be able to do that without so much controversy as with Trump. And it's like even now, of course, like they have to question him on his stop and frisk record as mayor. So it's like he's never going to survive a general election. I mean, like there's no way of that. Certainly, if you were the nominee in some bizarre world, which actually probably isn't that crazy, but where the DNC basically goes to a second ballot, and let's say they put up Mike Bloomberg, there's no way he's going to beat Donald Trump. There's full stop, never going to happen. Um, so I think just to finish up with this like fake outrage over the memes and Bernie Bros, all this, like I find it very condescending to the American people and like people who have to really deal with hardship that you're complaining about jokes on Twitter and memes and it's like the Bernie supporters care about policy like we make these memes and things like and it's very pervasive, it's part of the internet, it's like we're not the only people that make memes here, so it's just a way of like showing support and perhaps in certain cases spreading information, um, and like to go after it in this way, it is kind of authoritarian, I would say, because you're just like trying to like draw a line in the sand about what you can say, and like it's a meme, it's a form of expression, a form of a joke, and you're like gonna draw a line in the sand. It's like, oh, this is not allowed. And some people could even go as far as to say like, oh, we're gonna try and make laws, so on and so forth. I mean, like they're probably saying the standards for who should be president and so on and so forth. But and again, look, Bernie's not responsible for every single person out there who may or may not support him putting stuff online. Just the same as Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, people, whoever it is, when they go online and say ridiculous things about Bernie supporters that are not true, we're not going to complain about it because this is the internet and we understand how discourse works. Um, so pretty much the final thing is towards the end of the debate. I mean, there were not a ton of highlights other than these ridiculous side issues. Like I was saying, it's like Klobuchar didn't have a great night, um, because she was just, it seemed like, trying to save face and just she is just barely scraping by it being viable, and that's because Buttigieg. And that does lead to another important point I have to make. But Buttigieg is basically like I'm saying before, like I've said before, like the slickest talker I could imagine. I mean, like he just barely answers a question at all. Like can barely even address anything. He has no substance in his in what he says. But like there's occasionally a slip up that kind of gives away the game a little bit. And what I mean is, and again, I don't think Pete is the only one that does this, but they really try to kind of use Bernie's rhetoric, use just that form of idea of his campaign, healthcare is a human right. They take these kind of sound bites of Bernie's campaign and then parrot that, but they're not actually for the policy when you break it down. And so this was what he said. He said like the American dream, the number one place for the American dream right now is in Denmark. He's saying like it's not alive in America, and Bernie was laughing, and yeah, because that makes Bernie's point. It's like you're admitting, because that's what he's saying. We have to make our country, more like these European countries in the sense that they guarantee healthcare as a right, as in a single payer system, and they have universal education, including college. So it's just really ridiculous to me because I think Buttigieg probably does have a chance somewhat, but it's like him and Klobuchar are kind of gonna have to hash it out. It's like my prediction ultimately is like I think Bernie will probably win first place in Nevada, and whether that will be by a sizable margin, we'll see. I would hope he gets a good margin victory. Um, Warren, the best you could hope for is second place, so if that's what'll end up happening, let's see. And so it's like third place now. Pete and Amy are going to compete for that. Like it really is just like that's what always the story becomes down, because they don't want to talk about Bernie. It's like, oh, well, who's going to be in second place? Oh, they're going to have a real shot. It's like, or in third place. Yeah, like literally like a Reuters headline where they were like, it's like, yeah, it's like Amy had a strong third place finish or something in New Hampshire. But anyway, so the last thing for sure, I'm pretty sure, is this brokered convention question that was towards the end of the debate, and everyone but Bernie is just against democracy, full stop. Um, they asked the candidates, if you get to the convention and you don't have a majority of the delegates, so you have a plurality, but you have the most delegates, the most votes, and so when you get onto the first ballot and you don't reach that threshold and it goes to a second ballot, like what do you support? Should the candidate with the most delegates, the most votes, get the nomination, or do you let the process play out in the DNC? And everyone except Bernie said the person with the most votes should win. I mean, this is common sense stuff. It's like confusing to even have to say it, to be honest with you, because it just baffles my mind that the Democrat Party is against democracy. So they want to force it to a second ballot and let the superdelegates flip, basically, let the process unfold. Now, let me just make one point clear. Now, I'd have to go back and double check, but, I mean, in recent history, Hillary did not have enough delegates to cinch it. She had, like Bernie had to give up some of his delegates. She didn't win any counties in West Virginia, and then he had to give up his delegates. Bernie did, and I believe the same thing happened in 2008 with Barack Obama. It was very, very close, and Clinton had to give up her delegates to Barack Obama. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last Democratic nominee to get the majority of delegates was John Kerry. So, how can you claim to care about democracy? And you know, I've said it 1,000 times. We claim to live in a democracy, or you know, we tell ourselves that we live in a democracy. We don't actually, on paper, when you look at it, it's more like a democratic republic, if anything. I don't even know. I don't even think that would be the necessarily most accurate phrase. But so we just tell ourselves in the society that we do live in a democracy, and it's a sham. I think everyone knows that this is kind of a sham, and it's like, how could you not see through this? People are openly saying that whoever gets the most votes, you can have a process where you just negate that, and you have a bunch of elites choosing who the nominee is. And Elizabeth Warren said the same thing. They all said that. So Warren is saying that she's going to take this to the convention. That's how I would interpret it, 100%. It's like, no matter what small amount of delegates she has, she'll keep those delegates and not give them up to Bernie. And if that means he doesn't get a majority, if that means he just has a plurality and it has to go to the second ballot, then so be it. And so it's like, for her, how could she not see, if she really cares about progressive ideas, that she is getting in the way of that? And she, I know that she loves to do this like flowery rhetoric. I mean, like she almost fancies herself as like an Obama. Like, she talks about democracy. Like, okay, there's no way that you can have these two thoughts at the same time. Like, you don't get the most votes, and yet you're going to somehow be the nominee. It's not going to work in the general. And so, you know, especially if it happens in this way that I'm describing, If it's anyone but Bernie, it's guaranteed probably Trump victory. Probably. It's just like to imagine a scenario like this is honestly. It seemed like it seems to me like it wouldn't have been possible after 2016 if you had told me this, but it's kind of happening. It's just, so I'm simply saying, like Bernie's in a pretty good position overall, but there's a lot of corruption going on. So you gotta be very vigilant, and he has to knock it out of the park. So I think we have to do everything that we can. Um, but I'll get to that. I just want to go over some other quick things for why this is obviously horrible. Um, this whole Russian interference argument falls apart now because they all made it like it's like the respect for our democracy has been diminished. It's like, oh my gosh, what did Russia do? They've interfered with us now. Well, the DNC would effectively be interfering in the primary, as it really kind of did in 2016 too. But this is almost more brazen than what happened in 2016. At least you could at least say in 2016 Hillary got more votes, and there was a lot of factors that went into that. I mean, Bernie didn't have as much a big name recognition at the time, and the scales were tipped in Hillary's favor because she really kind of controlled the DNC when you look at the agreements that were in place. Um, but yeah, Hillary did end up getting the most votes. So, in this scenario now, there's no way they're going to be able to justify this. It's like it's not a convincing argument to tell people like, oh, you got the most votes, you didn't get the delegates, so we're gonna ixnay you out or whatever. Like this is really it's oligarchy and plutocracy. Um, and like I'm saying, like it's like almost no matter who it is, it just devalues. Like if it was Elizabeth Warren being replaced and not Bloomberg, and Warren replacing Bernie, it's like then now it doesn't mean much to me. It's like if you're gonna do that, if it's only yeah we have to nominate a woman. I mean, frankly, because that's what it's like always coming down to is like identity politics. So if that's all it is, and it's just like they want to nominate this one other person over Bernie, despite the fact that he gets more votes, yeah, I mean, people are going to be upset, and people are going to probably be marching in the streets, you know, in Milwaukee at the DNC convention, and probably all over the country, I would imagine too. Um, but like I'm saying, like with the Russian interference thing, like how could anyone take it seriously now? Um, to actually be like, oh, they stole our democracy, and then we're just going to blatantly ignore democracy ourselves. So I sound like a broken record, but it's just like, it's amazing that I even have to say this, that it's gotten to this point. So it's just sets a bad precedent on so many levels. It's inherently undemocratic, like I've been saying. Elites basically overruling the will of the people. It isn't being talked about how Bloomberg bought his way on stage. I mean, yeah, they had the rules changed in the DNC. They're like, oh, you don't have to have a certain threshold probably in the polls, maybe, or maybe it could have been like the donor. I think it was the donor number. Like, yeah, so it's the elites behind the scenes, controlling the rules and rigging things. It's what it's always kind of been. And actually, it's like with the caucus system. Obviously, they're not going to use the Shadow app with this Nevada caucus, but they they really kind of are showing that there was a lot of other trickery behind the scenes that probably was not known before, because like in these first alignment, second alignment, like delegates would get switched when they shouldn't have been, and so. Not to say that it necessarily stole an election, but it just shows that the insiders run the game, is what I'm trying to say. And so Bloomberg, in my view, is just as much an existential threat to the country as Trump is. He's, obviously his racist policies were very detrimental to communities of color, and they had to talk about that in the debate. He defended stop and or like he apologized for stop and frisk, but he's like, we've got to do something about crime. What are you gonna do? Um, and it's like he's acting like, if you look at his record, like the number of stop and frisks was like going up towards the end of his uh like tenure as mayor. So like it wasn't as if he was ordered to stop like towards the very tail end, but you can see like it was just getting out of control when you look at the numbers. And so yeah, like Biden went after him hard for that. It was kind of amazing that everyone just dunked on Bloomberg the whole time, and it's like I don't see how he can stay in this race, but he's a billionaire. He can just pour as much money into this as he wants. But yeah, I feel like he would be a much more efficient authoritarian than Trump probably ever could hope to be. And so, uh, definite final thing, we need to overwin in order to make sure Bernie gets this. I mean, it's just that simple. I have been donating money to Bernie. I want to go out and canvass for him in Pennsylvania. Um, do anything that you can to try and get this man across the finish line. And like I've said before, it's like I feel like this is the biggest hurdle for Bernie. It's like I don't want to be too overconfident and say like Sanders will definitely beat Trump. We should still treat it like a serious race and everything. But this is still the biggest obstacle because it's the heart of the corruption of the DNC, and it's just right before your face now, and they're telling you it's like we don't care how many whoever gets the most votes. Well, why should we even have an election? Like they should just choose it then. It's just there's these contradictions about our society and about how we call ourselves a democracy, but we're not actually a democracy, like I've said a million times. But yeah, so really, it's just the voting will obviously count. He has to get voter turnout like crazy, like a really big turnout. But it's not just that. Like we all have to really be involved as much as we can, and phone bake for him. Canvass, donate, and do whatever you can to get Bernie the nomination.